Welcome, everybody. Hi, welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you for your patience. I just had a slight technical difficulty, but we are here now. So I am so excited. Welcome to Level Up with Lori. We're going to be talking list to last today. It's going to be an awesome, awesome time. Let me just get all of our stuff ready to go here. All right. Welcome. And by the way, hey, go ahead and put in the chat. Tell everybody if you want, you can say hi, tell us your name, tell us like where you're at in the process of, if you're newly licensed, if you're in licensing school, if you're, selling houses out there, strong producing agent, whatever status you are, would love to meet you guys. So, and have you meet each other. And we're going to get started. So let me go ahead and share my screen. Awesome. Oops, let me just. Okay. All right. Perfect. Well, like I said, welcome you guys to List to Last Part 1. This is part 1 of 2 in the topic of listings. And it's one of my favorite topics because, honestly, it's called List to Last for a reason. If you want to make it in this industry for a long period of time, a really smart thing to do is make sure you have a strong focus on listings. And so, what we're going to be talking about today is going to be kind of like more the setup, the foundation, the positioning, your seller psychology. Today's not going to be about the listing presentation itself. What we're going to talk about today is how you position yourself before the presentation ever begins. Because honestly, most listings are not lost during the presentation. Honestly, a lot of times sellers have already made their decision before we even realize it. They're often lost in the first 10 minutes of the conversation that you have with them, in how you as the agent position yourself, and in the expectations that you set ahead of time or early in the conversation. And so what today is going to cover is, oops, hold on. There we go. What today is going to cover is understanding today's sellers, positioning yourself as the trusted advisor, qualifying the right opportunities, setting those expectations early, building confidence before you are going to the appointment. And then the next one that we do, part 2, will cover pricing strategy, listing presentation structure, objection handling, controlling the listing conversation, really a lot more about what do you actually say to Mr. or Mrs. Seller when you're in that process. And so that's what we're going to focus on today. So I hope you guys are excited. And by the way, feel free to ask questions in the chat and I'll take a look at those at the end. We've got a lot to get through. So let's get into it. So the first thing we need to talk about is why listings matter. And by the way, a lot of what you're going to hear me talk about today is straight out of the MREA book, which is the Millionaire Real Estate Agent book written by our founder, Gary Keller. It is not an opinion-based book. It's a book that is based around actual real life success strategy and research from thousands and thousands of high producing agents. And so it is a trusted blueprint that you can build your entire business on. And one of the things that has always stuck in my mind from the minute that I have been an agent to now is that Gary Keller teaches that the foundation of real estate is leads, listings, leverage. It's the 3 L's. And if you do nothing else in your business but focus on how do I get leads, how do I get listings, and how do I get leverage to do more of that, that's what makes strong agents. And strong agents that are focused on leads, listings, leverage typically grow faster than buyer only agents. And what I think is cool about this, we'll talk about this in a little bit, but it's not only that you grow faster, but you have a lot more peace and time freedom and ease within your business because you have a business that is a marketing engine, that is like a well-oiled machine that develops more and more business from the business you already have. Listings matter because they create marketing power. It creates buyer leads. From every listing, you should be getting at least 2 leads for future business. It creates neighbor conversations for future listings, social proof of your business, and of course, additional listings come as a result of that. Then the great thing about listings is it gives you a lot of schedule control. It gives you control over your time and maximizes your income per hour. Why? Because if you're working with only buyers, now don't get me wrong, I love buyers. I love working with buyers as an agent. I think they're a lot of fun. And it is a lot of a different schedule than if you're working with only listings. Because, of course, with a buyer, you might be in the car with them all day, multiple days looking at houses. And then they might just one day be like, you know what, never mind, we're not going to buy a house. And you're like, oh my goodness, I just invested, 30 hours into helping you try to find a house or whatever the thing is versus a listing. It's a lot less of you driving around and constantly going places. It's a lot more focused on the setup of the piece of business, the listing, the marketing around it, the conversation around it. And so you could sell a listing while you're at your kid's soccer game, and that's fantastic, right? And then business growth, of course, listings increase your transaction volume and positions you on the front end of the pricing and market knowledge. Think about listings like this. It's almost the same. Imagine if you had a store, right? And you open the store, but you're like, you know what? I'm not going to put anything on the shelves. I'm going to wait for customers to come in to tell me what they want, and then I'll just go find what they want. That's essentially what a buyer's agent is doing. Is it possible? Yes. However, if you were running a storefront, wouldn't it make a lot more sense to be like, I'm going to open the store and I'm going to put things on the shelves so that when customers come in, they can purchase the things on the shelf. That's exactly what you're doing as a listing agent is you are controlling the market, essentially. Listing agents run the market because you are creating the inventory. We, of course, also need buyers. So, no hate on the buyers agents, but when you're thinking about it, that's why we want to master listings. Okay, so all that to be said, the first thing we want to do if we're going to master listings is identifying A sellers. So what is an A seller? It basically means that not every lead that comes in, not every person that reaches out to you that says, hey, I think I want to sell my house is an A seller. An A seller just basically means ready, willing, and able, right? These are people that they're financially able to sell, right? They're not like up a creek without a paddle. They're ready. Their timing is real. Like they got to move. It's time to make it happen. And they're willing, motivated to act. And that means basically realistically that they could transact within 14 days. Now, what that means, transact within 14 days means that they would be ready to sign a listing agreement with you and go live, meaning on the MLS, or at least coming soon within the next 14 days. That's an A seller that really needs your time and attention, and that's who we're targeting. Now, there's going to be other people that'll come into your pipeline that are B's and C's, right? That are like, hey, we think we want to sell in 6 months, but we got to like get X, Y, and Z ready and repair this thing, or we want to wait till the kids get out of school, or in October, this is going to happen and we're going to sell. And they're just telling you. Now, you want to still keep those people in your pipeline. And there's a whole other training that we'll do on how to nurture those relationships and keep those B and C client sellers in your pipeline and tied to you so that when they are ready, you're their person. You just want to make sure that you're not pouring all your time into that because you could waste a lot of agents mistakenly waste an enormous amount of time on sellers who are really only like toying with the idea of selling. Or they're like, well, I'll sell if the perfect, most unbelievable offer, right? Their house is really worth 500,000 and they're like, well, I'll sell if we get an $800,000 offer. It's not really realistic, right? And so then you don't want to be wasting your time, energy, and marketing dollars on that at this current moment, right? So your job is to identify who needs nurturing. Like, who do you need to keep in your world and stay in touch with and encourage and support until they're ready in 6 months? And who needs an appointment right now where you need to drop everything, drive to their house, and do a listing presentation and get that agreement signed? So that's what we're going to focus on. I want to hear from you guys. Put it in the chat. How do you know when someone is truly ready to sell? What's your opinion? Put it in the chat. How do you know when someone is truly willing to sell or ready to sell? As you guys are putting it on in the chat, you can cheat a little bit. There's some right here, and I would love to hear your opinion. Which of these do you think is most pressing? These are some common things you'll find in an A seller. It might be relocation or job change, right? A deadline like, hey, I've got a job, I got to be in Chicago this time next month. They're going to have a real sense of urgency, right? Maybe they're already buying another home. Hey, we found a home. We've already put an offer on, but we got a contingency. We got to sell this baby. That is somebody that's ready to rumble. They're already interviewing agents. They've reached out to you and said, hey, we want to talk to you about selling our house. By the way, we also have two other agents we're interviewing. That's somebody that's ready to act fast, and you need to make that a priority. Or if their home prep has already gotten started, maybe they're already in the process of repairs, decluttering, boxing things up. Like they are demonstrating to you through their actions that they're serious. They're really ready to go. And so those are the things. It's relocation, buying another home, a deadline driven situation, already interviewing new agents, or a home prep is already started in the moving mindset, right? And so your follow-up strategy should match the motivation level that they're demonstrating to you. Let's talk a little bit about market reality and seller psychology. By the way, are you guys loving this so far? I hope you're already getting your ears perked up like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Because these are really like simple things, but man, it can change the game for you on what this looks like for you, for your business, for your lifestyle, and for your income. So let's talk about market reality and seller psychology. Basically, the emotional reality of sellers today. Here's the thing I tell agents all the time, like when I'm talking about, how to build your business, or we're talking to new agents about getting into the industry and things like that. We talk a lot about how, the cadence of what you're actually doing every day as an agent can be kind of mundane, right? It can be kind of like boring, right? You're going to lead generate every day, lead follow up, go on appointments, negotiate contracts. That's really all you have to do as an agent. However, it is never boring because we work with people in this industry. And by the way, it's an extremely emotional transaction. Buying and selling real estate is typically the largest financial transaction that the average consumer is going to make with the most amount of stress and emotion connected to it. Because unless it's like a business commercial deal, for the most part, it is very emotional, it's very personal. And so you have to keep that in mind with how you're communicating with people and really building this out. So today's sellers, generally speaking, are more cautious. They are more, I would say sellers think they're more informed, and also a lot of times they're more misinformed too, right? Meaning, how often have any of us even been guilty of this before we were licensed agents, that you got your opinion about the real estate market from the mainstream media, Facebook, or what your neighbor said, right? And all of a sudden we're like, oh, the market's awful, or this, that, and the other thing, right? So sellers are informed because there's a lot more ready information available to people, but they also can be misinformed for that same reason. They're also more emotionally attached to pricing expectations as a result of the last 6 years, right? As we all know, COVID, our whole home value pricing situation got out of whack, right? There's a whole, I should put that slide in here, but the trend line for home values. And in that period of 21 to 22, or 2020 to 2022, those home values went through the roof. And sellers in 2026 are still recovering from that mindset of like, oh my gosh, I bought this house 2 years ago. I should make a massive profit on it. And that's not traditional real estate. Traditional real estate equity typically comes, equity growth and wealth building through real estate typically comes from buying real estate and holding it for a long period of time. Not, I bought it 2 years ago and it's magically worth $400,000 more 2 years later. That's not reality in this current day and age, or traditionally in real estate. And so, but you do have that where sellers are, or even thinking, well, 6 months ago, my friend sold for this, and why is it not selling for that now? And so pricing is a very important thing that you're going to have to really master with seller psychology. And also, I would say too, that sellers right now are more afraid of making the wrong decision, right? Are they going to miss the market? Are they going to sell too soon? Are they going to sit on the market too long? Do they need to wait? Do they need to price here or there? They don't want to leave money on the table. And so, all that to be said, even though they're worried about all those things, what are they actually looking for? Really, what they're looking for is results, right? They're looking for results. They're not looking for the most fancy, fabulous presentation or the most intricate, long, detailed marketing plan. They're thinking, is this person going to help me get the result I want? And can I trust them? In other words, they're looking for an agent that makes them feel safe, confident, and guided. They want to feel like the expert. They don't really it's like they want you to consult them in the decision-making process of selling their house, and they want to feel safe, guided, and confident in that. They hire agents based on that. And so that is what we have to think about is how can I structure my presentation and how I interact with my sellers in a way that makes them feel confident in their decision. So I would like to know, your job is to lead through fear, right? Love that for shoes, clutching a pillow. But if you were selling your home today, put in the chat, what would make you nervous? If you were listing your home today, what would be your thing that would make you the most nervous? Today's sellers are more cautious, more informed, misinformed, like we said, more emotionally attached, all of those things. Our job is not to eliminate fear. Our job is to lead clients through it. What would make you the most nervous? And I want you to think about that because that is a great reflection on how do I help my clients. If I can understand like what I would be most nervous about, then I can speak to that and overcome that objection and that fear with the client before they even say it. Not that I'm going to assume they have the same fears and concerns as me, but I am going to say like, okay, gosh, if I know that I would be nervous about pricing, then I could say, hey, as we're doing the presentation, I know pricing is, a challenge right now. So many sellers, that's their biggest concern. How do I sell for the not too low and not sit on the market forever? And here is how we approach that to give you the best result, right? So I'm just calling it out and overcoming it before they have an opportunity to bring it up. And so you're eliminating those objections on the front end. All right, let's talk about getting the appointment. Before you win the listing, you've got to win the appointment, you guys. Your goal in the initial conversation is not to sell you. It is to secure the meeting. This is really important. Like so many people think someone calls, for a listing appointment but they start asking you some questions on the phone. And we feel like we've got to like overcome all those objections on the phone and talk about all the things. And we're trying to like get the listing, which is not the thing. Your goal when somebody calls you or texts you or Facebook messages you and says, hey, I'm thinking about selling, or hey, can you help me with what my home value would be? It's not to say, yeah, let me just send that all to you right now. It's to say, absolutely. You know what? I would love to get a CMA over to you, a comparative market analysis, and show you what your home value currently is. I'm going to print that off and give you a detailed packet. Do you have time tomorrow or the next day for me to come by for 30 minutes so I can go over this with you and make sure you don't have any questions? Your goal is to get that appointment. You're going to get that by responding quickly. Speed signals professionalism and urgency. If they have to wait 2 days for you to reply for them to get an appointment, what's their expectation probably going to be around everything else you're going to do, right? Then you're going to capture contact info, obviously, right? You got to know how to contact them, but you want to think like full information. So let's say someone messages you through Instagram and they're like, hey, we're thinking about selling our house. Da, 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 da. Okay, great. You know what? I would love to get that comparative market analysis set up for you. Can you go ahead? I want to make sure I get everything accurate and get you full details and I can get all the information over to you. So let me get all the contact information, like meaning, so what's you and let's say it's husband, wife. What's you and your husband's name, first and last name, like legally, so I can make sure that I'm looking at information correctly. What's the address of the house? Is this the best email for you? Should I need to send anything over to you? You're just politely and professionally, you're not saying, great, let me get your contact info before I can send you anything. You don't say that. You just kind of say, oh, by the way, so I can make sure I have everything accurate in case I need to send anything over, what's the best email for you? Oh, by the way, in case I run into any snafus while I'm doing research on your property, are you and your husband both on the deed? What are your first and last names? Right? So you're not being nosy. You're just saying, this is why I need that information in a polite way. Then you're going to identify motivation, understand the why behind the move. This is just a short thing that you can do when you're getting the appointment. Absolutely. I'm so glad you reached out to me. I would love to put a comparative market analysis for you. Da 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 da. Capture contact info. By the way, tell me a little bit more. What's making you guys think about wanting to move? Tell me a little bit more about your situation. I'm just getting a little gathering data, right? And then set the appointment as soon as possible. Momentum matters. So typically what I've always done and what I've seen work well for a lot of other top agents is I like to have time blocked out in my day to just always know in case of emergency, here's when I can do a listing appointment every day, right? So I'm not dropping everything and all of a sudden rearranging my entire calendar, having to get a babysitter or whatever the thing is to go to the listing appointment. I already have it pre-planned to know, hey, every day, just as an example, every day from 12 to 1 is listing appointment time. So when somebody calls me today and says, hey, thinking about selling, we go through this conversation framework that I'm telling you here. And then you say, great. So I'm so excited. I'm going to put this together for you. Do you want me to pop over today or tomorrow? I've got time from 12 to 1 on both of those days. So I'm not saying I'm available whenever, when do you want me to come over? I'm staying in control of my calendar and giving them what the method that I always say is I give them choices, right? 2 to 3 time slots that I can do, and a schedule, right? I'm staying in control of the time that I want to be available. Okay. If you guys have questions, put them in the chat. I hope this is helpful. Let's keep going. Let's talk about what sellers want most. I'm sure we can all relate to this, thinking as a seller. Research consistently shows that in general, so one thing I love is that NAR, National Association of Realtors, comes out with data every single year. And we just were at a conference discussing, how do sellers find their agent? What do they want most from an agent? What are their expectations? All that to say, it continues to center around these three core needs. This is pretty much what most sellers want. Correct pricing. They want to help price their home accurately in today's market. Now, are you going to have people that are just dead set on an unreasonable price? Yes. And that's a conversation and an objection we'll talk about next week, how to overcome. But generally, most people are not listing their house just to list it. They're listing it because they want to sell it. And so they want your guidance on how do they get the maximum amount of money for their house and to still sell it. The second thing they're looking for on their core needs is maximum exposure. How do they know that marketing their home, listing with you, is going to market their home effectively to qualified buyers? They want to make sure that they're getting enough of the right eyeballs on their house, and they want that from you as a service. And lastly is timely sale, selling within their desired time frame with minimal stress. So they want the best price with the maximum exposure in the fastest amount of time is essentially what most sellers want. So knowing that this is generally what most sellers want, you can focus your conversation with them on their goals, not on your services. So think about it like this. If you're having a conversation with somebody, if you are talking to somebody and the whole time you're like, yeah, and they're like, oh, I like to, walk my dog every day. Psychology says that it's not effective to be like, you like to walk your dog every day? Oh my gosh, I love dogs. In fact, let me tell you, the last 3 dogs I've owned are this breed and that breed. And here's the type of food I fed them. And this was my walk schedule with my dogs. And I really found that, in order for my dogs to be the happiest, this was the schedule that I gave them. And here's how we played, blah, blah, blah. Right? That person is like, I don't care. Because you know what everybody has is a mentor of mine once told me this and it's stuck in my mind forever. She always used to say, you treat everybody like they have a sign hanging around their neck saying, make me feel important. Make me feel important. And if you're selling, one of the most effective ways to help make someone else feel important, feel seen, valued, and heard is to essentially take the imaginary light and shine it on them and off of you. You do that by asking lots and lots of questions and being genuinely interested in them without needing to shine the light on you whatsoever. You will find when you have conversations in this way, people will leave your space and be like, oh, that was the best conversation. Oh, what an amazing agent. Oh, they're going to sing your praises because you subconsciously, psychologically made them feel important. So in that same example about the dog, let's say you meet someone, they're like, I have a dog and I like to walk them on Thursdays or something. Then you, instead of being like, oh, let me tell you about my dog, blah, 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 because then you just shone the light on you, you shine that light on them. You have a dog? Oh, what type of dog? Oh, that's so awesome. Tell me about, you mentioned you love to walk your dog on Thursdays. What's that about? Like, why Thursdays? Tell me about what you love about that. What's been your favorite thing about having your dog? What are some challenges? If I were to ever get that type of dog, what should I know? Right? So you're asking genuinely curious questions about the other person so that you're speaking to them and not to you. Does that make sense? So translate that into listings, same story. They don't care about your accolades, is what I'm saying. If you go to the listing appointment and you're like, let me tell you about why I'm such an amazing agent. They literally don't care. The whole time they're thinking subconsciously, when is this person going to shut up so I can ask my questions and find out if they can help me, right? That's what they want to know is, can you help me? Do I like you? Can I trust you? Can you help me? That's what they want to know. And by focusing on what they want most, that's what you're going to demonstrate. Okay, so let's talk about, I kind of alluded to some of this just now. Why are agents losing listings? So one thing that NAR shared about agents is that the average consumer knows on average about 9 real estate agents. And all that to be said, even though they know 9, about 82% of consumers, when they're ready to list their house, contact one agent. The remaining amount of that, whatever that is, like 18%, I think it is, to get to 100%, 82%, and then 18%, the other 18%, they contact 2 agents. So people are not contacting all the agents that they know to find out. So how do you be the one that gets the listing and doesn't lose it? Well, agents don't lose listings because they're bad agents. They lose listings because they make predictable, avoidable mistakes. First of all, talking too much. And this goes back to what I was just talking about are you shining the light on them or on you? One of the most common tactics in sales is that the person that speaks the most wins. And speaks the least. The person that speaks the least wins. So if you're talking too much, you're losing. So the mistake that you see is agents jump straight into marketing statistics before really understanding the seller. People support that which they help to create. They want to be a part of the decision and feel very personally consulted, not here's a speech about how awesome I am and what I'm going to do for you. Because they may not even care about any of that stuff, right? You want to talk to the seller about what they care about. Avoiding pricing conversations. So this is an example of sometimes agents will delay pricing discussions until the very, 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 very end of the conversation. It's not that you necessarily should start your listing. You walk in the door and you're like, hey, I think we should sell your house for 500,000. It's not saying that you should do that, but if you just avoid it until the very end, it could create resistance because they're ready to wrap it up, and now that it feels like a whole other decision they have to make. So you can kind of sprinkle that in along as you go, ask them questions. What were you guys thinking about pricing? Things like that. Avoiding difficult truths. So this is a good one, y'all. Many agents get sucked into this, agreeing with unrealistic expectations, because they just feel so desperate that they want to get the listing. This is the most dangerous trap that you can fall into as an agent is you go into a listing appointment and they're like, hey, I don't know. I want you to post social media content on this every single day on YouTube. Make sure it's reaching a global audience. And, I know that you had said in your report that the house is 675. That's what you think we should list for. But we really, we've been looking on Zillow and talking to our friends, and we really think we could sell for 775. And that's where we want to be. And then you as the agent end up saying yes, because you're like, I just want the listing. I just want the business. And here's why that is dangerous. Now, don't get me wrong. Let me just say, are there situations where agents take overpriced listings and it works out? Yes. But they don't do it by avoiding difficult truths. And what I mean by that is a lot of times agents will just say yes, and then they leave, and then they're like, oh, crap. And then like a month later, this listing is sitting on the market with no showings. You spent $2,000 on marketing, and 2 months later it expires and you don't even have the listing anymore. And you're like $3,000 in the hole. That's not a great place to be. So yes, do agents sometimes take listings that are overpriced in this market, even though it's probably not a good idea in general? Absolutely. But when they do that, they don't avoid the difficult truths. They say, okay, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I hear you that you want 775. I'm going to tell you, here's all the data This is not emotional. Here's all the data showing the exact margin, price margin that we need you to be in order for this home to move. Here's the amount of showings that you're going to get versus this category. And if they're dead set and you're like, I'm going to take the listing, you say, okay, I just want to be clear that this is the price and we can start at that price. However, we're going to write it into the listing agreement that in 10 days, if we don't have 10 showings and an offer, we are going to reduce by a minimum of X amount of dollars. And so you're pre-agreeing to the expectation so that there's no surprises later. And then lastly is competing on marketing. You know, it's very, very easy to do this too. Every agent promises photos, social medias, open houses, and fabulousness. Everybody does that. Everybody's going to say they're awesome. So you have to think about that's not typically the deciding factor. It's a part of the decision, but it's probably not the deciding factor and honing all in on that. They really want you to lead them. They want you to lead them through the transaction. They want a confident advisor. And when you can show up as a confident advisor to them, that's going to typically win the listing much more often than look at my flashy, flashy, flashy marketing. So you don't win listings by agreeing with sellers. You win listings by guiding them. By guiding them. Write that down. That's your mantra. I don't win listings by just agreeing with sellers and that's it. You win listings by guiding them and helping them find the path. That's why they're paying you, right? They're paying you to be their trusted advisor. Otherwise, and yeah, they're paying you for marketing exposure some too. But if you just market and then let them drive the ship and it's not working, guess who they're going to blame at the end of the day? You, not them. So your job is to guide them. So, how do you position yourself as an advisor? There's typically three roles that we see agents take in their business and in the eyes of a seller as with a listing appointment, and only one is going to win consistently. You can either be the order taker. That's someone that avoids conflict. You're the yes person. You just, you want to feel easy to work with, but you might not project expertise because you're just like anything they say goes. Yeah, what would you like to do? Right? You're the order taker. Now in 2020 and 2021, that worked. That's the tricky part about the industry. That worked back then because you basically just could put a sign in a yard and a house would sell. That is not a normal real estate market. In a normal real estate market, you will never make it as an order taker. You have to be an advisor. So you move up from an order taker to being a salesperson. That's not going to win consistently either. With some people, it might, but you might not get ongoing repeat referral business from those people. Salespeople can come across pushy, very script heavy, very like this is canned. They already knew what they were going to say to me before they came to this appointment. And it feels like you're not really listening. Sometimes sellers can feel pressured rather than guided, sort of like you against them. And you want it to feel like we're linking arms. And that's how you can present yourself as an advisor. Your goal is to come across calm, confident, clear, and honest. Honest in a kind, loving, and respectful way. You're not going to mince words. You're going to tell them the true expectations of the situation that they're in, and you're going to guide them through every decision. When they feel like that, they build confidence, and that's how you go from a transactional based business that's just like turn and burn, get a deal, get a deal, get a deal, and people leave not feeling great about it and don't refer you to anybody else. And you shift from that to a relationship based business where your clients will become your raving fans, your biggest advocate. And a year from now, you'll wake up and business is just flowing to you because you have raving fans that you've treated with 5-star service as their advisor. Sellers don't need another opinion. They need a plan. And that is where a really awesome agent comes in. So here are some powerful discovery questions. Feel free to screenshot this page or write these down. These are great questions to have in your back pocket to uncover motivation and build trust before you're ever discussing pricing or marketing. So things you can ask your seller, do me a favor, visualize the ideal outcome of selling your home. What would that look like? What would make this move successful for you? Why is that important to you? What is most important to you to get out of this process of selling your home? What do you need? What do you want? What would make you happy? If we could improve one part of the selling process for you, what would it be? These are very dialed in questions that will tell you in a non-invasive way what someone needs and wants. So if you ask them, if we could improve one part of the selling process, what would it be? And they say, you know what, we've got 5 kids, my husband works from home, and we've got a dog and 4 cats. If we could, you know, not have showings constantly and just, you know, go out of town for a week or two and get a bunch of showings, that would be so much less stressful for me than constantly having to make sure the whole house is clean and box up the dogs and all that stuff in order to have showings every day. That's a totally different approach to that listing than someone else might say, you know, if we could improve one part of the selling process, what would it be? I want the most amount of, I need $200,000 profit from this transaction, non-negotiable. Or I want you to um, give me really clear direction on negotiations, or I want open houses here every single weekend. Like people will tell you what they want, and based on what they tell you, you give them a different type of service. You're tailoring your business to them. Those are just a few examples. So let's talk about some pre-framing expectations. What is this? Basically, what this means is before you're even going into the listing appointment conversation, it's so important to set up expectations so that there's clarity. Because as you can see, they're either set early with clarity or later under pressure, right? It's either you're going to set the expectations with your seller, or a month later when there's been no showings and the listing is overpriced, you're going to be more bending to their expectations under pressure. And that's not a fun place to be. So you want to make sure you're ahead of it. Because when you manage it on the back end, then you're dealing with price reductions, negative feedback, angry clients, and extended days on market. And it is such an unfun place as an agent when you're like, gosh, I'm trying to do everything I can, but they're just angry. It doesn't give you a good long-term situation. So the first thing you want to think about pre-framing expectations is pricing. Make sure your client understands the relationship between price and buyer activity up front. What does that mean? Well, one of my favorite things that I always lean into and that most top agents lean into when it comes to this particular category of pricing is what I call the 10-10-0 rule, the 10-10-0 rule. And that stands for 10 days, 10 showings, 0 offers. So basically to say if your listing is on the market for 10 days, or if you have 10 showings, whichever one comes first, if you have 10 showings in 5 days, or if you have 10 days on the market with 4 showings, right? Like whichever one of those 10s come first, 10 days or 10 showings with 0 offers, the market has spoken. The market is spoken, and it's signaling that the listing price for your property is likely out of alignment with the market. The first 7 to 10 days are when a listing gets the most attention. That's, when it first hits Zillow as coming soon, or the MLS, all those things. That's when it gets the most attention, the most like excitement. And if there's a lack of offers or showings during that window, it indicates that a property is most likely overpriced. Because typically it's, price, condition, location are the 3 reasons why someone will buy or not buy a house. And oftentimes any house will sell for the right price. So it's really important to help them understand that ahead of time. Hey, okay, we're going to do this price that you asked. Just want to make sure you understand, like, here's the expectation that we both need to look for, me and you. We're looking for the first 10 days. That's when this is going to be the hottest. And so we are looking for an offer to come in within the first 10 days. If we go 10 days without any offers, or if we have 10 showings in less amount of time than 10 days with no offers, we've got to adjust the price. And here's the percentage. By the way, we'll talk about this next week, but I typically recommend price reduction of no less than 5%. If you reduce less than 5%, like let's say someone's like, well, I want to reduce it by $1,000, it's not going to make a significant amount of impact to actually increase traffic and find the right buyers. Market feedback. So that's the next one, pre-framing expectations. You're going to introduce the idea to your client that the market gives honest feedback, not the agent. So that goes along with pricing, right? To say, okay, here's the expectation. We're going to let the market tell us if this listing is, priced correctly or not. If you have a listing that's sitting, the conversation with your client is not, gosh, I don't know, like I need to do X, Y, Z. It is to say, the market is telling us, the market is telling us that we're overpriced. Because at the end of the day, who decides what a house is worth, or really any product? Who decides what it's worth? It's not the market. It's not what sold 6 months ago. It's not what we invested. A home is worth what a buyer in today's market today is currently willing to pay for it. That's a hard pill to swallow, but that's the truth, right? So you've got to let that market feedback work. Time on market. Set realistic expectations early before a listing goes live. That means to say, okay, here's the price and expectations. We're going to let the market tell us. And hey, by the way, in this price point that we're at, the average days in market are 39 days on market. That's the average days on market before a home goes under contract. So we're going to do this, this, and this to price correctly, reduce as needed, listen to the market feedback. And if we've only been on the market for 10 days, 20 days, we're also going to understand that we are still within the average days on market for a home like yours to sell. So we don't need to hit the panic button if we feel like we're priced correctly and we're getting the type of feedback that lines up with that. We don't need to panic until we start getting closer to going beyond those days on market. So that's important for them to understand as well, that we're not in the market where things are typically selling in 2 days, right? And that's not a you thing, that's a market thing. And then possible adjustments, normalize price adjustments before they happen. I mentioned that earlier. You're just going to think about saying things like, our goal is not to make your listing just look good online. Our goal is to position your home so that it sells. Do you want to list your home or do you want to sell your home? As an agent, I'm in the business of selling homes, not just listing homes. And so our goal is to position your home so it sells. Can we agree on that? And that's where you're going to go. All right. So, and that's what I was just saying. I forgot that I had this slide in here. So you're setting those expectations early, establish with clarity before the listing. That creates smoother transactions, fewer surprises, and stronger trust. Remember, your client wants to feel like you're their advisor and they want to feel confident that they can trust you. One of the best ways to build trust is to be transparent and honest in a kind, loving way. When people why do people, for example, not like used car salesmen? No hate on used car salesmen if you are one. Just saying, just stereotypically, right? Or door-to-door, whatever it is. Why do people not trust salespeople in general? It's because they typically assume that that person is saying things for their best interest, not for the client's best interest. And the way that you shift that perspective is to be very transparent, honest, and demonstrate that you see them as your top priority above your own needs. And when you do that, you build trust. That way, when things get hard, if they have trust in you, it's a way more pleasant transaction to navigate if it gets rocky than if they feel like you've been out for yourself the whole time. Also, as a side note, it's important to be thinking about that because not every client is going to be upfront with you. Right? And what I mean by that is not like you don't want to, I'm not talking about misrepresenting a property. We don't do that, right? We don't do misrepresentation. What I'm talking about is like, okay, you list a house and they didn't tell you that, by the way, they might be getting a divorce. And like 2 months later, they're like, oh, okay, never mind, we're breaking up. And, it changes the entire dynamic, right? Or, they didn't tell you that they need X amount of dollars because their house is about to go into foreclosure and they just decided not to tell you that they haven't paid their mortgage in 4 months, right? There's things like that. And so you have to understand that they might not tell you everything. And it's even that much more important that you are building trust on your end, because the more they trust you, the more they'll open up about those other things, which helps you help them, which then in turn helps you, right? It's a circle. And expectations managed under pressure during price reductions or negative feedback erodes confidence and damages relationships. We're not going to do that. Okay, let's keep it cranky. We got a little bit more to get through. I hope you guys are loving this. The next thing we're going to talk about is the pre-listing packet. So this is something that I absolutely love. It's a fantastic way to sort of like layer your appointment and create more buy-in before you've even walked in the door. The pre-listing packet, your listing appointment actually begins before you arrive. When sellers review your packet before the meeting, many objections disappear, the conversation is smoother, and the seller is more prepared. So What am I saying? It basically means that your pre-listing packet is going to arrive to their house before you have the listing appointment, ideally. Now, sometimes someone might call you today and you're going to go to a listing appointment that afternoon. Now, in that regard, I might say, hey, I'm going to email you over some information to review before I come over today at 1. And that's the pre-listing packet that I'm going to email to them. If it's like they want me to meet them in a week, then I'm going to mail or drop off to them a pre-listing packet. The power of a pre-listing packet, it's not everything, right? Basically, what you're doing is you're pre-selling you. So they get to review ahead of time your value, your professionalism before you ever even step in and say a word. It also is going to save you time spent on the basics during the consultation because they're going to be curious. They're going to look through it. They're going to be like, oh, wow, look at this, and this that person does, or look at these reviews. And a lot of their like the fluff of selling you is going to come in the pre-listing packet. So you've already subconsciously, passively pre-sold you without having to walk in and be like, let me tell you how amazing I am, right? You're going to have testimonials in there, previous listings, examples of what you do, brokerage credibility, all of that in your pre-listing packet. So then when you show up, it's ready to go. What goes in a pre-listing packet? Well, the first thing is you're going to have a cover page and contact info. They're going to learn about you. What's your agent value proposition? What are the testimonials? 5 testimonials of clients that are happy with you. What are the things that set you apart? This is where you do sell you. You do highlight you in that. They get to read it at their leisure. You're also going to share things like your track record. What are previous listings? What are the results? I'm known for, here's my last 5 listings that all went under contract over asking price or whatever your strength is. If you're new, you can say, here is, you can include a lot of information in there about brokerage credibility. If you don't have a lot of business yet, the power in, now this is just my opinion, right? Because I represent our brokerage, Keller Williams Connected, and in our brokerage, we have 221 active listings right now in both North and South Carolina, and a massive amount of business comes through this office. And so you get to lean on the shoulders of that which is already established to say, when you go to that listing appointment, hey, here is what my brokerage does for listings. And when we, and we'll help you, we've got all this templated out verbiage and everything, but as an example, when you list with me, not only do you get my services, but 275 other agents are going to promote your listing and push it out there in their marketing channels. And I have access to X, Y, and Z. And so those are the types of things you're building up brokerage credibility because they are hiring you, but they're also hiring your brokerage. And obviously you can also include seller education, an overview of the selling process, general pricing education of how you may come up with the way you want to price their listing. So that way, by the time you show up for that appointment, your seller's already going to think, dang, this person's got it together. They are professional. They're buttoned up. The last listing appointment that came through earlier today, they just randomly showed up and haphazardly walked through my house and wrote things on a piece of scratch paper. You're going to stand out miles ahead of that other person if that's the case, right? Okay, we're almost done. List to last. So a strong listing starts with, in review, correct expectations, clear communications, realistic pricing, confident leadership. Weak listings start with unclear expectations, unrealistic pricing, reactive communication. When you lead with this list to last framework and mentality that I just shared, you have fewer price reductions, you have happier clients, you have stronger referrals, and less stress for you as the agent. A listing that is set up correctly in this way that builds sustainable business for you is one where you are leading, not reacting. And it'll change how you feel about your entire business because you are truly not at the mercy of clients and whatever, comes to their mind over their morning coffee. You're in control as a business owner and you have confidence for why you're doing what you're doing. And if you're new, you get to borrow the confidence of other people and say, based on experts that I'm partnered with, this is why we're going to do what we do. So I think that's really important to think if you're on here and you're getting your license, you don't have to be the expert. You're not going to feel confident when you're a brand new agent. Heck, my whole first year as an agent, I was still like trying to become confident because think about it like riding a bike. What kid is ever confident about just riding a bike? They're not. They're scared about falling and all that stuff. So how do you take the training wheels off and start to get confident? You just got to ride the bike over and over and over again. Well, same thing as an agent for all of us, whether you've been in for 10 years or one day. Whatever you pursue in life, the way you get confident is through doing. The more you do, the more confident you become. And until you become confident, you borrow other people's confidence and other people's beliefs through using systems that are proven. So you're taking the guesswork out of it to make yourself strong, effective, and professional. So, all that to be said, let's finish with some confidence here. Winning listings is not about being louder or more impressive. It's about being clearer and more confident. You don't have to dress like you're a billionaire. You don't have to. I mean, heck, I'll use my husband as a great example. If you've ever met my husband, he is a killer listing agent, and he is a very he would self-describe himself as like very country southern, like he grew up in the, you know, backwoods in South Carolina, if you will. So people all the time will comment on his accent and like how he approaches things. But the reason he has such great experiences with his listings is because he doesn't worry about being loud and impressive. He's genuine and honest and puts the other people first. And that confidence of prioritizing other people builds a lasting business. And you can do that too. So don't worry about, I mean, you don't have to have a fancy car. You know what I'm saying? Agents who win listings consistently are the ones who just ask better questions, guide clients calmly, and set expectations early. Okay, that is List to Last part one. Now, part two, next week, we're going to talk about pricing strategy, listing presentation structure, handling objections, controlling the listing conversation. I would love to hear from you guys, or just think to yourself, what expectations do you need to start setting earlier in your listing conversations? Or based on what you have learned today, if you've never had a listing presentation, what expectations do you think you're going to really practice start setting in those conversations so you can have a great listing business in your real estate business? That's everything for today. I would love to hear your questions, comments, or anything at all. How are you guys feeling? Was that helpful? I love this. Joey said sometimes the fear of change, even when it's known, can be an item of concern, pricing as well as clients. Yes, yes. Show honesty and integrity. Absolutely. Don't overpromise. Absolutely. It's so, so, so important. Awesome. Kevin, I'm so glad you found it helpful. Thank you for being on. Anybody have questions, comments, or anything at all? Are you guys excited? We're going to go out there and crush it with some listings. Oh, I'm so glad you found it helpful and informative. That's awesome, Joey. Thank you guys for being on. I appreciate you. Stay tuned for the next one. If you attended, you will get an email from me with resources around this, the slide deck and whatnot, and the recording. So stay tuned for that. Thank you for being here and being a part of this. I'll talk to you later. Bye.